Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, SourceForge sees some downtime, so we'll examine their infrastructure. A new pervasive hacking group gets exposed, and their previous hacks are fascinating. And then we'll take a look at the hacking team with an exclusive roundup. It's a great big batch of your great questions and our answers, a rocking roundup, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 225 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems network and administration podcast. We stream this episode live on July 30th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, DigitalOcean, Ting, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Our live stream, why, that's powered by the incredible Scale Engine. Go over to scaleengine.com to go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan. Happy Sysadmin Day.
Hey, everybody. Happy Sysadmin Day.
It is a special day. Happy SAD, everybody. And we'll have more about that in the feedback coming up in today's episode of TechSNAP. But the chat reminded us right as we started. In fact, we have a couple of special items to celebrate in the feedback. Alan, our first story this week, when I saw SourceForge in the title, I was like, oh boy, what are they doing now? But this is actually a whole nother train wreck SourceForge has on their hands that's more up the TechSNAP alley. What's going on?
Exactly. So starting, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, SourceForge and Slashdot were completely down for a little while, and then they were down in their, or back up in their disaster recovery mode, where basically they only had a light version of the site instead of the full thing.
Ouch.
And so based on some blog posts from them, we now have the details of not only a little bit about what happened, but also just a view inside their infrastructure and what kind of software they actually use to run something like SourceForge. I figured that would be quite interesting.
Indeed.
And also, yes, this bit quite a few people. For example, we were trying to set up some stuff here at Scale Engine, and the documentation for two of the tools we wanted happened to be at SourceForge as part of the website that was hosted there, and it was down. We're like, this will be restored soonish. I was like, sure.
Right. Go figure.
So SourceForge suffered a large data corruption problem and was down for quite a while. They got some stuff back up right away. They focused on getting the websites and stuff back up, and then the downloads, and then the source repositories and so on. Not everything is back up yet, but they're working through it, and they have a blog post with an update on what's done and what's still to be done and when they plan to have big chunks of that done. But they say the Slashdot Media, which is a company, or the subsection of the company that does Slashdot and SourceForge.
Right.
The Slashdot Media sites experienced an outage commencing, they say last Thursday, but that was a week ago, so 2 Thursdays ago.
Okay.
We responded immediately and confirmed the issue was related to file system corruption on our storage platform. This incident impacted all the block devices in our Ceph cluster. We consulted our storage vendor, and from there went on to formulate our next steps and start trying to restore stuff. So as part of that post, they explained what it is that the back end of SourceForge and Slashdot are actually built with. So they use CentOS Linux as their server platform. They didn't mention which version, but I assume probably 6.
Okay.
We use an open source virtualization platform and have in recent years achieved a 75% reduction in physical server count by using virtualization. So running lots of virtual machines on fewer physical machines meant that they didn't have to buy as much hardware or rent or whatever they end up doing.
Yeah.
I don't really get into that detail.
Okay.
They say they use open source storage platform Ceph with a mix of spinning disks and SSDs. Their storage backing their Ceph is a mix of ext4, XFS, and then they say NFS, although obviously the NFS is how they access it, not, NFS isn't the file system. It's just a way to access the other file systems of the network. But they say their backup solution is open source, and they back up to a number of popular cloud storage platforms. So they don't go into detail, but it sounds like they back up to Amazon and somewhere else in case.
Oh, really? I was picturing like, we just store a copy on Dropbox. It's good.
Well, they have a lot of data.
Yeah, I know. I'm totally kidding.
When they talk about it later, the download section of SourceForge is over 40 terabytes.
Ooh.
It's like, that's not that much. I have lots of servers that can handle 40 terabytes. But yeah, they don't say which cloud services, but I'm guessing the cheapest 2, and they just have 2 in case one of them goes out of business or whatever, because if they're not Amazon, they could randomly go out of business, right? Yeah, and they also say they use open source database stuff, including MongoDB and various flavors of MySQL, like MariaDB or Percona or whatever. I'm guessing kind of over time they've started using the newer ones, but there's still stuff using the older ones too.
Yeah.
And they also use Postgres for some stuff. They say we leverage scalable data solutions, including Hadoop and Elasticsearch. They mentioned that Slashdot is written in Perl, whereas SourceForge is now written in Python. But both of those stacks are completely open source. And the SourceForge developer services, where they provide hosting for like Git or SVN and like a bug tracker and all that, mailing list, all that stuff. That's from a project called Allura, which I think was written at SourceForge, but they've since open sourced it and give it over to the Apache incubation process. So it's a completely open source project now. They say currently they're prioritizing getting the project websites back up, especially ones that use custom vhosts, because if a project has whatever.org and it's hosted at SourceForge, they really want to get that back up. I think all of those are back up now. So you can access documentation for that open source code you were trying to work with again, which is handy. And then they're also getting the downloads back up. And like I mentioned, they have 40 plus terabytes of downloads. And then they're working on getting the rest of, SVN, CVS, Git, Mercurial, Bazaar, all the different, they basically have every different source code repository thing available at SourceForge.
But wow, Alan, this is like, is this the nail in the coffin? I mean, this is a really bad thing to happen for a company like this right now.
If you're following through their blog posts in order, of basically in the week in between the very first post of the outage and the post Tuesday of this week with the updates on it, is the post that DMI, which is DICE, the job posting site that owns SourceForge and Slashdot, is looking to sell SourceForge and Slashdot.
I saw that. Yeah, they're looking to sell it off. So
yeah, it's like, and they talk about how SourceForge has a good reputation and so on. It's like, well, they did until you ruined it with your download spam and trying to make money off.
Yeah,
trying to include malware with your open source downloads.
They've ruined the brand.
Yeah, so I don't know where it would go from here, but it's for sale anyway. So SourceForge didn't actually lose any data because they have the backups. Well, they've done some specific emails to a couple of projects where a couple hours worth of commits might not be there, or that they're manually reconstructing. So I think for some of them even they have the code that, like the patches that were submitted or whatever, but not necessarily the metadata of who submitted it and so on. But if a project was affected by that, SourceForge has contacted them directly, and there weren't very many of those. And it would only be the last couple of commits or whatever. But yes, it does raise the question, so should projects move away from SourceForge because it might not be there after a little while, and where do they go to get hosting? There are places like GitHub that will host your source code, but when you actually have to do releases and
and there's other features that it offers,
things like
that
small Linux distros have their ISO files up there, which are huge.
There's documentation, there's community stuff that it provides.
And the bigger question is, what about the projects that aren't actively maintained anymore but are still used? Like one of the applications I was using, it's still on SourceForge, but hasn't been modified since 2006. Works perfectly fine, but yeah, if SourceForge were to go away, I don't think I would be able to find the code or the documentation for it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's always solutions like rolling your own GitLab and hosting it yourself somewhere and things like that. But
it's more what happens to all the projects that aren't going to bother moving.
Exactly, or that don't know any better, or that are legacy, that things that aren't maintained anymore. Yeah. So
I would hate to see that whole history of, that whole generation of open source stuff, especially basically the whole 2000s of open source, just disappear because SourceForge shuts down or whatever.
Yeah. Have they said if they're going to be posting like a follow-up, a post-mortem report on everything?
Yeah. So in the post that was posted Tuesday of this week, they said that once they get everything restored, they'll start working on the post-mortem, trying to figure out how every one of the block devices in their Ceph could have gotten corrupted. That seems fishy.
All right, so something to keep an eye out for.
So the bigger question is, are you going to use ZFS next time?
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. There it is. Very nice, very nice. I'll
Like
tell you,
even if you're using stuff on top of it, sure, just you need to have something where the data is not going to get corrupt underneath, right?
I invite our subreddit, techsnap.reddit.com, to keep an eye out when that gets posted and submit the link there so we can get it in a future episode of the TechSNAP program. Mr. Jude, any other thoughts on that story?
Nope.
All right, then let me take a moment and tell you about our friends at Ting. Go to techsnap.ting.com because I think they're the perfect wireless carrier for our audience. It's no contract, so there's no early termination fee, and you only pay for what you use. They start with $6 just flat for the line, and then it's just your usage billed on top of that. That's a nice model. It's great for Wi-Fi hotspots, tablets, adding like a GSM chip to a security monitoring system or a Raspberry Pi, or having a backup phone or having it be your main phone like I do. TechSNAP.ting.com. Go there. That'll support the TechSNAP program, and you can be the audience member that makes a difference and keeps us going, and also it'll get you a $25 discount off your first Ting device if you have a Ting-compatible device, and you might because they have a pretty big GSM and CDMA network, two separate networks, and you can bring devices from those networks. And then you'll get a $25 service credit. And that more than paid for my first month. And what's awesome is even though you get all this incredible value, still you get like Cadillac-level service. When you call at 1-855-TING-FTW, you get to speak to a real human being. That's nice. And if you ever need to, you can go online and manage your account through their dashboard, which is particularly fancy. And I've actually been able to transfer devices, deactivate devices, name devices. You can watch your usage, all those kinds of things that you'd want, but really well done and simple without even having to speak to someone if you don't want to. I just think that's a pretty nice system, and it's nice that I've been able to do everything I've needed to through it. But here's really what I want you to check out now. You've heard us talk about them for a while, but check out some of the devices they have new. Now, new lineups from the whole range. First of all, the SIM cards start at $9. That's it. No contract with that SIM card, no early termination fee. Then they have the feature phones like the Kyocera Dura XT starting at $47. Again, no contract. LG, a little bit nicer. The LG 450, a little bit sleeker, also a feature phone, $58. I like to mention they have feature phones because I think those actually make a lot of sense. But then, of course, they have everything else you might want. You know, like they have the Motorola G, which the Moto G is awesome. The Moto E 2nd Gen, $122, no contract, unlocked phone. You own it outright, only pay for what you use. For the Moto G and the Moto E and the Blues and the OnePlus and the iPhone and the Moto X and the Nexus 6 and the Samsung Galaxy S6, the Moto, the HTCs, all of them. They have all of the great phones over on Ting. You can go grab one, or you can bring your own, or you can just use a SIM card. It's a really cool service, and all of the features you'd expect, like Wi-Fi tethering and hotspot, that stuff, just like built into the plan. It's like not like an extra thing you have to have. You just turn it on in the operating system. It's not a big deal. No bundling or ride-along services, no overages, no penalties for that kind of stuff. All the features you'd expect with no contracts. Go to techsnap.ting.com. Go to techsnap.ting.com to support this show and to get started and check them out. They also have a savings calculator over there. You can plug in your current usage and see how much you would save if you did switch to Ting. techsnap.ting.com. And a big thank you to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Mr. Jude, we have a group that you and I think, have actually talked about when we covered the Anthem hack a while back. But maybe we didn't know the group's name back then. I can't quite.
I don't think we did, no.
Yeah. So they're called Blackvine, and now we've got a new report that gives us some interesting details, don't we?
Yeah, so the semantic research team has posted this. They're basically big PDF detailing the Blackvine APT group and what they've been working on. They broke in. So Symantec found that it was Blackvine that broke into the health insurer Anthem, installed more than 80 million patient records. It'll be interesting to see if they can also tie the same people to the, what was it? Started with a P. What was the other healthcare provider that got hacked in a very similar way?
It wasn't Primera, was it? No.
Yeah.
It was Primera?
Primera and one of the other ones. There were like three big ones that got hit a couple of months apart. And they were a lot of the signs pointed that it might have been the same people. Okay, well, I
remember, I'll watch the chat room, see if they recall.
Well, the other one was like a Blue Cross something, but
that's Primera.
There are like 50, but there are like 50 different companies with Blue Cross in their name.
Yeah.
It's all affiliated. Anyway, so they say the group, Blackvine, has the resources to customize malware and to have access to their own zero-day vulnerabilities in Microsoft Internet Explorer in order to launch their watering hole attacks. So they would basically target a website that they knew a lot of people in the industry they were trying to compromise went to, would somehow find a way to break into that site and inject some a bit of HTML or whatever that would cause the browsers, when they visit the site, to load their malware and execute a vulnerability against Internet Explorer and compromise the machine. So you add a little iframe into a website that everybody in the healthcare industry reads all the time, and then you can exploit the vulnerability in Internet Explorer because corporate IT rules mean that they're all forced to use Internet Explorer, and so forth.
Yeah, well, or there's some app that at least mandates it, so
yeah,
requires
it. Say BlackVine's malware is called MyVast, and it was used in the Anthem breach. Said the hack likely began as early as May of 2014, but Anthem didn't realize its system had been compromised until January, and then they did disclosure in February once they found out that they had been hacked. They say the hackers made off with personal data, including names, birth date, member ID number, and social security numbers for 80 million patients. They say, like other BlackVine attacks, the MyVast malware was signed with a fake digital certificate, and so this made it not throw up errors. When you get the pop-up to run something with Windows UAC, it's got a verified name, and so it's okay.
Or like a driver or something like that.
Or if you have blacklist things that don't let any unsigned executables run, it gets through that. They say since 2012, BlackVine has gone after other businesses that deal with sensitive and critical data, including organizations in aerospace, technology, and the finance industries. They say the majority of the attacks, about 82%, were waged against U.S. businesses, but they have also hit foreign businesses as well. They said during its research, Symantec discovered that BlackVine began using exploits around the same time as other hacking groups. Each group delivered different malware and went after certain organizations. So the fact that they use the same exploits as other groups suggests the attacks are related to the same distribution network, or that they're buying their exploits from the same place.
Yeah. Or maybe being funded by a similar source, perhaps.
Yeah, or at least just being provided with the exploits by somebody or something to that effect.
Yeah.
It's hard to say whether we do know that exploits come out and they go up for sale, and when you're selling an exploit, you'll sell it to as many people as you can as quickly as you can, because once it's been out for a couple of weeks, it'll likely get patched.
Yeah, exactly. Less and less effectiveness.
Yeah. I say one of the group's first attacks came in December of 2012 against the gas turbine manufacturer Capstone Turbine. In that hack, they used Internet Explorer exploit CVE 2012-4792, and they delivered the Sakura malware.
Oh, nice.
Symantec notes that the malware was signed with a digital certificate attributed to a company called Microdigital, which fooled Windows into believing the program was a legitimate program. They don't say whether they stole that certificate or managed to brute force it or what. In 2013 and 2014, BlackVine targeted companies in aviation and aerospace. One third-party blog cited by Symantec noted that in 2013, specific employees at a global airline, they don't say which one, but one you've heard of, were sent a spear phishing email, including a URL that instructed them to download Hurex, and that would then compromise the machine and get access to the internal network they were on and whatever. Symantec also claims that some BlackVine members may have ties to TopSec, which is a Chinese IT security company, and is a group that has access to the Ellerwood framework, which might explain their source for some of those zero-day exploits. But if you want to read more, we have the whole fancy PDF from
we do.
Symantec's security response team.
Wow, this is really their bag now, isn't it? This is what they do.
Yep.
It's not they're not an antivirus company anymore.
Oh, well, they are, but...
I mean, they are, but this is obviously what they're focused on.
Well, this is
big money here. This is big money.
Exactly. It's not so much about making antivirus for your home computer. It's about trying to defend the network of, Lockheed Martin or whatever.
Anthem's still being a little dodgy about the hack, it says, too. Like, they were refusing to respond to comments and updates and stuff like that, so still being kind of dodgy about the whole thing.
Yeah. Companies don't want to look bad, and
also still very tenuous links to China. Still very tenuous, in my opinion. They're using the Elderwood framework, okay, and they think they have connections to a Chinese company, okay. But I would imagine a lot of probably well-established hacking groups have connections to Chinese companies. But I probably have a lot of connections to U.S. companies and European companies too, and Canadian companies. So I don't know.
Hard to say.
TopSec, a Chinese IT security company. That's TopSec is who they say.
Yeah, but I can also see Symantec having reasons to make it to suggest China even when there's not as much evidence as there could be, right? Because it plays into the fears of their clients, which are large defense contractors and basically large enterprises in the U.S.
And look at this. It says, and one of the reoccurring themes it seems to be that BlackVine has of industries that they attacked. And you mentioned this when you're covering it. One of their first attacks in 2012 was against a gas turbine manufacturer, Capstone Turbine. They used the IE exploit, the CV 2012-4792. But they say that same month, they can't really tie this one to BlackVine, but that same month, another unnamed turbine power manufacturer was attacked using that same Sacural malware, whatever it is that you... Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if it looks like that was done by different people, then that suggests that...
Well, they're not sure.
Like you said.
They're not sure if it was different people or BlackVine, but either way, it's like that same month, these two different turbine manufacturing companies were attacked using the same malware.
And it's like, did China need a turbine for something?
Well, yeah, or are they trying to slow down competition? Could that be another thing, right? Is just slow the competition down, don't you think? It doesn't even have to be like, I don't know. There's all kinds of reasons. It seems like there's all kinds of reasons to do it. And of course, we're just speculating because it doesn't necessarily even have to be China at all. It could have been, private company getting that information and selling it to other private companies. Who really knows? Alan, any other thoughts on that story?
Nope. Except for that one.
All right, let me tell you about DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com right now and just check them out. If you have any background in virtualization, server administration, things like Apache, all these kinds of like general software stacks that you've kind of been either exposed to at one level or another, you got to see how DigitalOcean is pulling it off. It's like nobody else out there. It is such a slick experience. I'm really impressed by it. Just right there, it's worth checking out. And we have a promo code so you can do it for free for 2 months. It's SnapOcean. But let me tell you a little bit about DigitalOcean because it's going to solve some problems for you. They're a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. And you get started in less than 55 seconds. And pricing plans start at only $5 a month. That'll get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, 1 CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. And their pricing is so straightforward. You only pay for the resources you actually use. You can do by the hour if you'd like. And when you use our promo code SnapOcean, you get a $10 credit. So you can try out their $5 rig for free. I have a $10 rig I'm using to run Minecraft. It works perfectly for that. I've got several $5 rigs. That's the one I use the most. And what I love about DigitalOcean is they make it so easy to deploy software. So easy to get up and get going with the base operating system and the software stack you need. Subscribe to the official repositories of that distribution or operating system. And their interface to manage all of it is really intuitive and very powerful. It's not, even though they've made it simple and straightforward and it works across all your devices, it's not limited. It's not, you don't have your hands tied behind your back. And in fact, they really let you go free with their API. It's a very well done, straightforward API that replicates the functionality of their dashboard on a larger scale. Are you getting why DigitalOcean is really cool? This is just the basics. SnapOcean. You can deploy a FreeBSD droplet, a Linux droplet. You can get some really fantastic community tutorials written up over at DigitalOcean that just go with part of the service. Once you get going on a droplet, you use these communities, you can really get going. How about backing up your web applications? Here's a really good tutorial on that. They have a whole bunch of stuff over there. How to deploy Rails apps with Unicorn and Nginx on Ubuntu 14.04? Yeah, please. How to install Apache Tomcat?
Mail server?
Yes. Right? How to install WordPress on Ubuntu 14.04? They have projects that utilize the DigitalOcean API just available for you to take advantage of right now. DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code SnapOcean to support this show, but to also get yourself a $10 credit. You can try out that $5 rig absolutely free for 2 months. You can apply it to your account at any point if you forgot to do it when you set it up. You can also, remember, you can get one of their higher powered rigs and use the $10 credit towards the hourly pricing. DigitalOcean.com, use the promo code SnapOcean. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean. I've got many droplets on there. And I just got back from OSCON. I'll tell you guys more about that in a little bit. And the OSCON coverage that we do is... I don't know how else we would do it without our DigitalOcean droplet. Like we use it as an intermediary while we're traveling. We can set up resources there. We use it to move files back. Noah goes back to Grand Forks, North Dakota. He's like, oh, I forgot to give you this file. We use the DigitalOcean droplet as the intermediary. It really is a great system. I love it.
Because with DigitalOcean, you get a full gigabit connection, not just 100 megabits like you would get from most other places.
Yeah, it makes a difference. It really makes a difference.
It does.
All right, Alan. So we have a hacking team roundup. Where do you want to start with this one?
So basically, instead of a third news story, I have a whole bunch of stories that we'll go through a little bit quicker than normal.
Okay.
And I didn't want to completely fill the roundup with all stories about one thing, so I kind of grouped them together. So basically, I just have a bunch of news that has piled up about hacking team that we haven't talked about yet.
Okay.
So the first one is that the hacking team article where a hacking team claims it always sold exploits and malware strictly within the law.
Of course.
Which raises the question, why is it legal to sell exploits and malware at all? But apparently it is, as long as you're selling it to the government and other, approved entities.
Of course.
But the creepier one was a hacking team and Boeing talking about plans to build drones that could infect your computer or cell phone via Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's nuts, huh?
Yeah, so I'm guessing this would, fly above your house or wherever you are and broadcast a Wi-Fi SSID to one that you're already associated with.
Like a honeypot Wi-Fi SSID, basically.
Yeah.
Get your phone to connect to it.
Get your phone to connect to it and then, feed it malware or do man-in-the-middle attacks on it or whatever they need to do.
Yeah, and you got to figure they're not the only ones working on this.
Exactly. In particular, in this one, it was a company in Washington, D.C. that makes drones had specifically asked them if they could build a ruggedized module that would spew out malware that they could strap to the drone.
Jeez.
So there are more details on that over at that link.
Evil.
Microsoft has done a patch for the Windows kernel 0 day that was being used by a hacking team. So if you want more details on that, there's a whole article there. NetRegard, which we've talked a little bit about in the past, another company that does kind of the same stuff.
Yeah.
They buy and sell exploits and so on. They've decided to stop buying exploits after the fallout from the hacking team compromise. So I'm assuming this means they will still develop their own and sell them. They just won't buy them from random people anymore.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a little unclear what they're going to do.
Do you think it's because the business is getting too hot and hostile, or do you think it's what?
I think it's just them trying to look like good guys or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Contrast themselves to hacking team, basically.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. This next one's constitutional malware, Alan. What is this?
Yes. So this is a paper from a conference, and it's talking about how FBI agents have deceived judges, ignored time limits on warrants, don't tell computer owners after they've been hacked, and don't get the required super warrants before enabling webcam snooping and remotely activating people's webcams.
So he's kind of using a play on the words in a way here and making a pretty valid point, saying that they're constitutional malware, basically. They're that's clever.
That they're circumventing the rights you're supposed to have.
Yeah, that's a good post. I'm reading just the summary, the abstract here, and that makes you think. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then a more recent one here. The hacking team has promised to rebuild its surveillance software. So after all this proprietary stuff got leaked, it's like all of our customers that have bought the hacking team software, don't worry, we're rushing around like crazy people right now to write newer versions of our software that
there you go.
Won't be based on the stuff everybody knows about, so that you can
it's all new stuff.
Spy on people.
Yeah, it's all new versions, everybody. New features, all new features.
Yeah, and they'll be ready in like a week.
Yeah, what?
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So, I imagine they're trying to fix the vulnerabilities people might have found in their existing code that got leaked, and basically set up to use new exploits that people won't have patches for yet.
Jeez.
Or whatever.
Jeez. Alan.
Or the ones that weren't popular, everybody pushed the patches and whatever. And then over Slashdot has an interview with the hacking team CEO. If you want to hear more from their side.
The man himself speaks, huh? Good. Well, there you go. Very interesting. This has been an interesting story to follow, just from one catastrophe after another, and how they've been handling this has kind of been the most amusing
we talked
part.
a little bit about it, in specifically, what was the French one? VuPen.
Yeah.
And companies like that. But part of me had a harder time taking hacking team seriously because of the name hacking team.
Yes.
Like maybe it made more sense in Italian when they came up with it or something. I don't
know. No, it's dumb. It's dumb.
Yeah, it's just a horrible name.
Yeah. It's like brand generic.
Everybody's not been a fan of those types of companies, and yeah.
Well, so I suppose now we just kind of sit back and see if. Do you think the most interesting bits then out of the hacking team release is hit the web? Do you think probably all the big surprises are over?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I know. I'm sure we'll hear more, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure there'll be more, but yeah. Hey, Alan, I got a big surprise for you. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP, buddy. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP is where you go to get a system that is really going to be the ultimate solution for any solution powered by open source. So if you've got a rig, if you've got a need for a rig that's going to be a flawless implementation, because they're going to have well-tested, white glove care before it gets shipped out to you. You're going to get it there. It's going to be some of the best build quality you've ever seen. You're going to have support infrastructure based around it, so if it ever does have problems, they're going to be there to take care of it, and a lot more, too. In fact, Alan could probably attest to this. I think, Alan, do you have 3 servers being built right now? Is that?
I do, yes.
3 servers from IX. Why? Are you a madman? Have you gone mad?
Because I needed a lot more storage.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's a good reason.
The one server has 36 6-terabyte helium-filled drives, so that's 216 terabytes of storage.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 hold 24 drives each, and those will go at my house for backing up the first server.
So what about at your house? You're gonna have how much at your house?
At my house, it'll be. Does that right?
Stand by.
Yeah. 240 terabytes.
Nice. IX Systems is going to build those rigs for Alan. Of course, Alan's paying. Yeah. I mean, he's a paying customer. So is Scale Engine. And you know, if you there's a large range that you can get. Of course,
I bought every end of the spectrum from them as well. You know, I bought this little half depth 1U server for quite a bit under $1,000 for a full. It's an E3 server with 8 gigs of ECC RAM and 4 gigabit NICs and everything you would want in it's fully powerful server, and it's a little tiny, quiet, half depth 1U that you don't have to have a rack at your house to use or whatever. For a couple $100 up through giant storage servers that cost 5 figures where the first number is not a 1.
And of course, they have the units like the FreeNAS Mini, which Tom's Hardware just got a review posted. So if you want to go look at some pictures of that and take theirs, did you get a chance to look at the Tom's Hardware review for the FreeNAS Mini?
I know Chris Moore that I do PSD Now with keeps a FreeNAS Mini like this under his desk.
Yeah, sure. Because
it's completely quiet and it provides all the storage he needs and it's nice and fast.
Oh, they've got pictures. I like that. They got close-ups. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes if you want to read Tom's Hardware. Go to ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. There you can get their white paper. You can download that to learn more about them, maybe grease the wheels off the chain in your organization to move over to a better hardware provider, one that's not going to shy away from the real solutions that are going to solve your business's problems, and one that's not going to give you the runaround, and one that's really been in this for the long. They're in this for the long term. They really are. They've been in it for a while. And they're part of the community as well. And the reason why that's important is because they end up working directly with the people that are actually creating the software and solutions that power our infrastructures today. So much of our stack is open source, and a lot of the best minds are working with IX Systems. ixsystems.com/TechSNAP. Alan, something big happened this week. Real big. I mean, not like discovering a new planet. Well, no, maybe it's discovering a new planet big with alien life. Maybe it's in that category of big. That is episode 100 of the PSD Now program. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations, Alan. 100 episodes straight from the source, episode 100. People should go check it out. It just came out this morning. Anything of note for this episode, Alan?
We had an interview with one of the people that was at Package Source Con talking about Package Source, which is a cross-platformish version. It's kind of like it's NetBSD's version of the FreeBSD ports tree, but designed to be cross-platform. So on top of being able to compile on lots of different processors and so on, like little MIPS things or whatever, it also works on other operating systems. So it works on Linux, it works on SmartOS and Lumos and all your Open Solaris derivatives. So it's used all over the place. But it's basically a completely self-contained package management system that doesn't have any dependencies. It basically bootstraps itself and gives you the access to something like the ports tree on any platform.
That's awesome. Episode 100 of the BSD Now program, and congratulations to the BSD Now team. That's slick. You guys can find that at jupiterbroadcasting.com. This is the midway point of the TextNAP program, so it's a good time to go get the HD version of that show. So when this wraps up, you get more Alan Jude in your face. But with the news all done, that means it's time for the TextNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP at jupiterbroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at techsnap.reddit.com. And I also want to say happy Sysadmin Day. This Friday, July 31st, is the 16th annual Sysadmin Day. And remember, your network is up and secure and your servers are online because of your sysadmin. So there are some suggested ways to celebrate: cake and ice cream, pizza, cards, gifts, words of gratitude, custom t-shirts celebrating the epic greatness of your sysadmins, balloons, streamers, confetti. All those things are good on Friday, July 31st. Or maybe, Alan, for that diehard sysadmin in your life, a discounted book on ZFS.
Yes. All of the Mastery series of books from Michael W. Lucas are half off with the SAD15 coupon code.
SAD15.
Yes, for Sysadmin Day 2015.
Yep. Half off? 50%?
Yes, you get 50% off the ebooks, which are already only $9.99. So you can get the ZFS book for half price if you go to the link and use that coupon code.
Wow, SAD15. That's great.
Yes, there's also other books in there like FreeBSD Mastery Storage Essentials, which is basically the book you would want to read before the ZFS book if you don't know how to manage disks in FreeBSD. It talks about, partition schemes and all the stuff that's not specific to ZFS. There's also sudo mastery. No matter what operating system you use, you probably use sudo, and you probably use it wrong, so you should read the book and learn how to do it properly.
50% off all that stuff's a great deal.
And there's DNSSEC, and so you could buy all 7 books for only $35 if you use the coupon code.
SAD15. Happy Sysadmin Day, everybody. All right, speaking of BSD and SSDs, almost rhymes, doesn't it? Yes. Our first one comes in from Goran about pfSense and killing SSDs. He says, "Hey, Chris and Al, big fan of the show. I never miss an episode. My first episode was the pfSense makes sense. So I have a pfSense question. I stumbled across this topic, and he links us to it on the pfSense forums. It was basically saying that pfSense will kill an SSD very fast. And the reason is that NAND flash cells can only handle about 10,000 writes before they become unusable. Now, this topic is kind of old, and SSDs have progressed a lot since then, but I really want to know if upgrading the drive of my pfSense box will make things better, faster, or worse. I have a few production pfSense boxes deployed, and I was wondering if it's worth buying SSDs for pfSense, and if things will ever be better or worse reliability-wise. I usually run a 2.5-inch 7200 RPM drive inside a Supermicro 1U server with an Atom D25 chip. Also, I install pfSense on a USB 2.0 or 3.0 drive for a small home network. You think the performance will be much slower than if I just use a standard disk? Is it even going to be noticeable? Keep up the awesome shows. Look forward to PSD Now episode 100.
So the big thing is a USB thumbstick thing is going to wear it faster than an SSD because it has fewer cells to load balance and less code for dealing with that in the firmware. But the biggest thing is that pfSense uses a nano-BSD type setup, so it has like 2 firmware images it can swap between and so on. So the biggest thing, an SSD is probably overkill just because you're not going to need that much storage. But in the end, there's not going to be that many writes to it, right? The operating system is actually read-only, mounted read-only, and then a memory FS is put on top of that and stores the extracted config files.
What about things like, firewall logs or squid cache, stuff like that? Right,
stuff like that's going to write to it, but some logs are not going to kill your SSD. Like your average SSD is good to be written to basically the entire size of the drive once a day for 5 years without dying. An enterprise one is good to write over the entire drive 5 times a day for 5 years without a problem. So your consumer grade ones won't be quite as good, but in the end, it's, your log files are not going to be that much churn.
Okay. And since I deployed my new pfSense firewall at my house, which has been how long now? I've been using an SSD in that because it was a cheap SSD and I just wanted it to be fast.
Yeah. I doubt you're gonna run be the problem.
Yeah. All right, so I'm not sure if we'll have a specific fix here for Tim in Web City, but maybe we can get some general recommendations for him. He has a question. I think it basically boils down to the best random read performance out of array control. He says, "Hey guys, I've been listening to your show for about a year now, and I love the mix of humor and awesome tech details. I'm a school technology director and work together with a small team supporting about 4,500 users, and is close to about as many devices. Listening to TextNAP makes me smile more and lose less hair even as I think about the labor of keeping good security and server uptime. I'm trying to get some performance input on a good RAID parity for random read performance on an HP server. We have a couple of Gen 8 HP servers with decent hardware RAID controllers to 420i's, capable of basic modes, 1+0, 0, 1, 5, 56, and 60 RAID levels. Right now, we run our storage cluster off these two servers via a combination of spinning disk and PCIe SSDs mirrored between the servers with a product from Starwind. The SSD storage mirrors are great, and thanks to large SSD caches like a terabyte attached to the 11 terabyte spinning disk mirror, the write speed of the spinning disk is great too. But the spinning disk read performance, not good. The spinning disk mirrors are made up of 4 drive RAID 0 sets on each side, 1 set in each server, and again they are mirrored via Starwind for some level of data protection. We have recently added 4 more drives to each server so that we can test another RAID parity. I'm watching the needle move now as they convert from RAID 1+0 and debating trying RAID 6 or possibly something else. Again, thanks to SSD cache, our write speeds are great, but we need something better in read performance. Going from a pair of 4 drive sets to 8 drive sets will help either way. But is there a RAID mode that could give me the best random read performance? We need something in the interim until we eventually move to a pair of TrueNAS boxes from IX Systems. The primary workload for this storage is supporting about 40 server VMs in our Hyper-V cluster. Spinning disks are 3 terabytes, 7200 SAS, which I do understand is the largest part of our read performance issue. Thanks for all the great input week after week. Really appreciate you guys. Tim in Webb City, Missouri.
Cool. So yeah, my first recommendation was, well, if you did it with ZFS, you would have more control over a bunch of things. And specifically, that Starwind product might be the bottleneck. It's hard to say because I can't look at your system or whatever, but yeah, in the interim, until you get to the TrueNAS, your best bet might be the 1+0 in a bunch of sets, or something to that effect, depending how you're doing it. Now, so currently you're doing groups of 4 drives, so if you did 2 of those as 1+0s, that might help, but basically, for the best IOPS, you'd be looking at just, yeah, like 1+0s of 2 disks are mirrored, and 2 more disks are mirrored, and 2 more disks are mirrored, and 2 more disks are mirrored, and then you stripe across all of those. Right? So you want the highest number of what ZFS calls VDEVs, but individual sets of disks. Right? So you want as many separate sets of small mirrors as you can, because that'll give you the highest IOPS, right? Because in a mirror set, when you write, you have to write to both of them, right? And but when you read, you can read from either. So depending how much storage space you need, if it's just read that you're worried about because your SSDs are going to solve the write problem, then wider mirrors might even help, because you can, if the data is stored on 4 drives instead of 2, then when you read it, you can read from all 4 at once. So maybe your best bet would be just, 4 deep mirrors, but you probably need more storage than that. So it's really a trade-off of all those things. Yeah, but if you can afford the space cost, then obviously doing all 4 disks as one mirror, so just all 4 disks contains 4 copies of each disk contains a copy of all of the data. Yeah. Then when you're reading, you can read from all 4. You can use all 4 heads seeking at the same time. Right. Now it depends on if the controller is smart enough to optimize that to get even more out of it, but it will definitely give you more than if it's only doing the same thing with half as many drives at a time. But it comes down to how much space are you willing to give up, or how many drives can you afford to waste on extra copies of the data to read from?
Yeah, just for read performance.
But the biggest thing is that if you were, once you use the TrueNAS, you could have a terabyte SSD for read cache, and so on.
That's true. Yeah. All right, Benny writes in with our next question, Alan. He says, "Hi guys, Benny from Israel here. While Linux has GlusterFS and Ceph for a while now, and Microsoft has introduced storage spaces direct, I would like to build a scale-out storage solution using FreeBSD and ZFS. Is there such a solution? My needs are mainly NFS and iSCSI. I saw that GlusterFS has some support for FreeBSD, but I need something that can work in production and won't actually get me fired. Any suggestions? I know that if anyone can answer my question, it would be Alan. Thanks for the great show." So he's looking for something where he can sort of add just keep adding more and more storage from different servers that he adds to the pool. Is that essentially what he's trying to get at here?
Yeah, basically to have a big storage cluster that spans across servers. So yeah, GlusterFS has support for FreeBSD now, and it's getting better and better. But I haven't had time to play with it yet. I actually was playing with it a bit before because I was looking at even just using its NFS mode to basically make one NFS file system or exported set of mount points that was actually just combining a bunch of my completely separate ZFS pools into one namespace, so that I could mount that as a directory and just access all the servers from one common mount point.
Yeah.
But I never got around to finishing that.
But would you recommend? I mean, but you're not. He doesn't really want to use GlassRFS on FreeBSD, really. Is there?
Well, it's not as tested as he probably would like.
Yeah.
So there isn't really something available today. But there was. If you watch Matt Aarons' talk from BSDCan, he was talking about some stuff they're thinking about doing in ZFS itself, because everybody would love that, right?
Sure. Yeah, that would be nice.
But that's still at the design phases. So GlassRFS is probably your best bet to try. I just don't know the best way to do that yet.
All right. So we have a longtime viewer, Chris, writing in about SSL Ponting. He says, hey, guys, longtime viewer of Last and I've been watching TechSNAP since the beginning and love the show, and I have 20 years experience in Unix IT, all at the enterprise level. I love the contrast that Chris Consulting and Alan's ISP experience brings to the show. It makes me look at things in a different light. I recently had to regenerate SSL certs for my home web server. They're self-signed. I do SSL because I want to rather than need to. They're 2048-bit certs. I'm wondering, for the sake of argument, if 4096 wouldn't be better. What would this cost me in CPU and network? This is all theoretical. Really, nothing needs SSL at all, but I was just kind of curious. Also, are there any best practices regarding using the same cert for web, mail, DNS, etc.? Is it a good idea for managing them or a bad thing for security? And finally, you often mention $10 certs. From who? I can never find anything less than 100. Thanks, Chris.
So the 2048-bit is currently the minimum, so going higher probably okay. You might want to avoid going too high at the moment just because some browsers might not support them. And also, if you want people to access it from a phone, that might have a slower processor.
I was going to say, yeah, mobile.
But I don't think the processor overhead is that high, especially with things like AES-NI allowing most of that to be offloaded and so on.
Sure.
So I wouldn't say 4096 is really going to cause you many problems. So yes, you can go ahead and do that.
There you go.
If you run it, I don't know any browsers that are causing.
And if you I would think if there's going to be a browser that has an issue, it's probably going to be a mobile browser, maybe, just because maybe some weird wonky thing. I don't know about that. You could check it out and let us know. Actually, I'd be really curious because I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to experiment with that. So this is just a bit of a community feedback. We're always experimenting with different recording formats here at Jupiter Broadcasting in the background.
We didn't get to answer the second half of his question.
Oh, did he have the certs? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. I'll save my. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the one place I looked at was Gandhi.net, GANDI.net. They're a
Gandhi
FreeBSD type place.
Okay.
They have a bunch of different certificates for different prices. They have standard SSL, where they'll give you a domain for free with your. If you buy the domain from them, they'll include a certificate for free. Or they have their other ones. They started at about $47, but. Yeah, their price for a certificate is $16 per year for the SSL certificate.
Yeah.
And then GeoTrust and the other one both do for usually somewhere between like $9 and $15 as well.
Yeah.
The most recent place I bought those from was Namecheap. They have them for that price.
Yeah, Namecheap. Also, chat room. We have a couple of recommendations in the chat room for Start SSL.
Start SSL. The certificate is free, but if you need to revoke it, like when we had the Heartbleed thing, they charge you then, which can actually put you in a weird position.
Yeah, because you really got to do it.
Right. But in the end, the amount they charge isn't outrageous, and in the end, it might have actually still saved you money if you don't end up revoking it.
Yeah, really? I would think so.
Or, if your alternative is to pay $100 to some other place, then the free one's not bad.
Yeah, I would think so. So there you go. Thank you for sending that in. TechSNAP at Jupiter Broadcasting. Go to the contact page and send in more. Those are great questions. We do have a few more in the kitty, but we want some more too. So we have a great batch to pick from next week. All right, so what I was saying is every now and then from time to time we experiment with different recording formats. We don't usually publish them, but I did publish this one. I want to get some feedback on specifically I'm reaching out to commuters, and we have a lot of commuters on the TechSNAP program. So I'm looking for some A and B comparisons between a multi-track remastered version of Linux Unplugged, episode 103, and a standard recording edition that we do for live video production. I'll have a link in the feedback section of the TechSNAP program. It's currently stickied at the Linux Action Show subreddit if you're listening a day or two after this episode came out. And I just kind of want to find out for commuters if there's a big difference in audio quality and if it's something we should investigate further, so that way we can make the listening experience even better for our audio listeners. And that's one topic that's important to the TechSNAP crowd, so I wanted to mention it here as well. So Linux Unplugged 103, multi-track remastered, linked in the TechSNAP show notes. All the things we talked about today actually are in the TechSNAP show notes. Funny how that works. All right, Alan, so that's all the feedback. Like we mentioned, you can also submit feedback to the subreddit, techsnap.reddit.com, and we have the form at jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. But with the feedback all done, it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't fit at the top of the show, but we still want to give you some links to follow up on your own after the show. And some of these great links came from our fantastic subreddit over at techsnap.reddit.com, like this first one. Intel's 3D memory is 1,000 times faster than modern-day storage, puny humans. Well, Intel and Micron have unveiled a new novel kind of non-volatile data storage. During a press conference on Tuesday, they dubbed it the 3D X-Point. Pronounced Crosspoint, actually.
Yes, 3D Crosspoint.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting because in addition to the 1000x speed, it also claims to be 8 to 10 times more durable as well. So not, doesn't wear out as fast as SSD either.
My body is ready. This could be a big breakthrough. You think we'll ever see it come to market?
And they're saying, they're saying it'll come out in 2016, and that the price point will be somewhere between the current NAND flash, but less than the price of RAM.
Ooh.
So it's not going to be necessarily that overpriced either.
Yeah.
The big thing is that it is actually like a material-based storage, apparently.
What does that even mean, material-based storage?
I don't know. So it isn't electron-based; it's material-based.
Oh. Whoa.
They're not getting into specifics yet, but it kind of sounds like, I don't know, they're physics that are slightly different to how we've been doing it before.
Yeah.
But they're 3D stackable, and the cross-point connections allow for dense packing of individuals, but still being able to access in every individual cell can be addressed, even though you're packing them together really close.
Wow. Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
This next story.
We see a lot of stories like this of the Intel one, and
yes, yeah. But this one, but you think this one actually goes. Yes, okay. So this next story, you knew we had to talk about it. I mean, how can we not talk about it on the TechSNAP program, the online cheating site, Ashley Madison? This is the site for people that are actually planning to cheat. Like it's like a dating site.
It's like where both sides are perfectly fine with having an affair.
Yeah. So Krebs got a write-up about it. 37 million users? Holy crap.
Well, there's 37 million accounts. Not all of those necessarily belong to, and a lot of them are fake or whatever. It's like any online website, especially one of this type. There are a lot of, I'll sign up with a fake account just to look around, and then maybe if I find something interesting, I'll make a real account or something.
Gotta love that slogan, though. Life is short, have an affair.
Yeah. Kind of straight to the point.
Yeah.
They also have some other sites. There's like a Cougar something and establishedman.com and so on.
Ooh, nice.
So one of the things, apparently the motivation for the attack where they broke in and stole all this data and are threatening if they don't shut down the sites that they'll release it all, was that the sites charge you $19 fee to erase your personal information from the site.
Oh, so somebody got a little upset about that.
Yeah, so if you create an account and then decide that you don't actually want to have an affair or you don't want your wife to find out about it,
or the affair didn't go well or something.
Yes, then it's $19 to erase all your information. Except if you pay with a credit card for various reasons, they keep your billing information anyway. So your name, address, and credit card information is stored even if you pay them the fee. And so if you're being charged a $19 fee to be forgotten and then are not forgotten, and that's what the attackers claim is their motivation for the hack.
Ashley Madison, life is short, so just leak all of your information. That's one way to tell your spouse.
Yeah. It's interesting because the company behind this that owns the whole sets of sites was apparently considering an IPO later this year. And back in May, the Wall Street Journal said, with Adult Friend Finder and other sites like this having been hacked before, that's definitely something that investors have to consider before they buy this stock. And then, lo and behold, look what happens.
Wow, what a geez. That'll put a hold on your plans. That's a good form of corporate espionage, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see whether the company actually shuts the sites down or not. I don't think they will.
Yeah, all right. I don't know what to make of this, but I want to throw it in the TechSNAP roundup because I think it's relevant to the TechSNAP audience. There's word that new FCC rules may prevent installing things like firmwares like OpenWRT on Wi-Fi routers. Now,
Yeah, there was some discussion of this in the FreeBSD as well, because it's kind of a problem.
yeah, so there's a talk scheduled on August 6th entitled OpenWRT versus the FCC Forced Firmware Lockdown. And the speaker has provided the following abstract. The new FCC rules are in effect in the United States from June 2nd, 2015 for Wi-Fi devices such as access points. They require to have a firmware lockdown so the end users can operate with end users can't operate with non-compliant parameters, channels, frequencies, transmitter power, etc. In response, Wi-Fi access point vendors start to lock down firmware to prevent custom firmware, such as OpenWRT, to be installed, using code signing, etc. Since the same type of devices are often sold worldwide, this change not only affects routers in the US, but also Europe, and it also affects wireless communities. And then it goes on other things he'd like to discuss. I wasn't really aware this was becoming a problem.
Yeah, the FCC rules have been anti-open source for a long time. For example, when you build a physical device and you want to make a change to it, you have to pay to be recertified, which costs a couple $100,000. And so this means that anything open source, every time you did a release, you would have to do this, and that makes it completely impossible.
Right.
To actually ship an open source device. Now, separately, once you get into the software, yeah, they're getting very picky about this stuff, and it's like, well, in the end, we just want Wi-Fi that we can put our own software on because that's safer. And I'm not sure why they're so interested in blocking that.
Maybe it's just ignorance, but I doubt it.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like the FCC has the right people's interests in mind.
Yeah. All right, so Samsung might have the right people's interest in mind, though. Samsung has issued a fix for some Linux
Right. So if you remember the story we talked about, what was the name of that company? Started with an A. Is it in the news there? It's in one of the links.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes.
there was a company that reported that they were having this weird data corruption issue with Trim, and it was killing all their Samsung SSDs. And like, don't buy Samsung SSDs.
Right.
Well, and then Linux went and blacklisted all those SSDs, so certain features wouldn't be used to try to avoid the problem.
Right.
And during the investigation, Samsung determined the problem was actually in the Linux kernel all along, and it had nothing to do with their SSDs.
Oh,
and stopped
good.
blaming us.
Womp womp. And so now older kernels have this problem?
Apparently, yes. So Samsung has got a fix for it into the kernel, and hopefully people will stop having problems.
Yeah, and hopefully that patch that will be backported to a distro near you for all of you running distros that have really old kernels.
Yes, and the Samsung SSDs should get de-blacklisted this way.
Now, a black mark has been removed off the internet as far as I'm concerned, as Google is officially ending forced Google Plus integration. First up, YouTube. They say, guess what, guys? Gosh, forced integration just doesn't make sense. They say now everything will be in its right place. Google Plus accounts will not be required to YouTube comment.
Yeah, but also the one that was getting me was, for example, when the real name policy on YouTube that they had meant that now all the videos for the conferences, like BSDCan and so on, instead of being posted by FOSS-LC, the group that goes and volunteers and takes videos at all these conferences, they're all posted as Andrew Ross because that's the other guy of the account.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure now how exactly they're going to roll this integration back as far as the administration end goes, because for companies right now, the way I delegate access to the Jupiter Broadcasting YouTube page is through Google Plus, through our company Google Plus account.
I'm guessing they're not going to disable integration with Google Plus. They're just going to stop requiring it.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm sure there'll be some ungraceful transition to something else
if only
in a
there
couple of
was
years when they come up with it.
some way to have prevented this in the first place.
Yeah.
All right, Alan, our next story in the roundup, FireEye intern nailed in dark code downfall. What's, oh yes, there's a little FireEye controversy here.
Dark code was one of those underground marketplaces that was selling stuff, and it turns out one of the guys that was selling the Dendroid malware on there, his day job was working as a white hat malware analyst at FireEye, which is a big research company.
Now, I've also heard a rumor that he's just the fall guy for FireEye, that they used him so that way they could just blame him when things went south. There's a little hubbub going around about that.
Well, it's weird because FireEye is the security research company, and it has nothing to do necessarily with selling malware.
Well, that's why there's hubbub. That's why it's a bit of a hubbub. So the rumor is that FireEye, higher ups in FireEye, had approved selling malware that they had found, and then they were selling it through back channels, and they used this guy to make the sales, so that way if they ever got caught, they could just say, it was some kid that did it.
My biggest argument against that one is FireEye has many, 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 many zeros.
I know.
Selling this malware for $300.
I agree.
Maybe a manager was doing this, but it wasn't something sanctioned by FireEye itself.
It's because there's bigger fish to fry.
There's just not enough zeros involved for FireEye to bother.
Just saying. That's what people are saying. That's the hubbub.
I can definitely see how somebody else that worked up at FireEye and had administrative control over this intern might have done. There might be something like that going on, but it definitely wasn't all the way up to the top at FireEye just because it doesn't have enough zeros to bother.
Did somebody swat Brian Krebs?
Yes, back in 2013.
Oh, okay. Yes, I remember that one. I thought this happened again. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just this week, though, he got a letter from the Department of Justice saying, hey, we noticed that you got swatted, and we arrested one of the people that did, and they pled guilty.
Oh, okay. I thought it happened again.
So apparently the Department of Justice is actually cracking down on this and is going after a bunch of people. Although this one in particular looks to be related to an investigation into a specific site where Brian Krebs did an expose on this site that was posting docs on celebrities and social security numbers and so on. Mm-hmm. And after a story about it, a couple of days later, he gets swatted. And he was like, I wonder if those two things are related.
Yeah.
And the Department of Justice is arresting a bunch of people related to the site. And all of a sudden, he gets this letter saying, yes, one of the people that we arrested is being charged under a bunch of charges, including conspiracy to do this to you. And as such, here's your notification. They don't say exactly who or what. It was a very vague letter. It was like, why did you send this to me, Ben?
Other than we just want to get the word out that we're cracking down on it, maybe.
Well, the letter's just to him, I imagine went to a bunch of other victims as well.
Yeah.
And yes, it's good to finally know that something's being done about it years later.
It's horrible PR for the police force, too, so you'd think they'd want to do something about it, because it just...
Well, this is federal at this level, right?
Yeah, I know, but it's like the worst PR possible to keep to how embarrassing from an outside perspective from the U.S. that swatting is even a thing, that we have a term called swatting. That itself is an embarrassment,
and the fact that it doesn't happen in any other country.
Right. So yeah, I think it would be in their best interest to clean it up, in my opinion. Now I love this one because anytime Experian gets a little kick in the knee, I'm happy. Now even if it's just a poke, in the neck, I'm happy. So what's going on here?
Yeah, so like we talked about before, Experian bought this company, and it turns out that company was selling people's IDs to an ID theft service. And
they didn't do much about it during the time, was part of the problem. They didn't seem to be motivated to clean
They
it
weren't
up.
doing any checking on what was going on. And so people whose identity was stolen through this ID theft service that was buying the records in bulk from Experian and then selling them on the black market, the people that were affected by it are now engaged in a class action lawsuit against Experian for their, lack of diligence.
Good for them. Good for them. I hope they get something out of it. I hope they do.
Yeah.
Experian can afford it.
Everybody else considers about, hey, if people trust us with data, we should actually make an attempt to not just sell it to everybody who will pay us.
Yeah. Wow. And then
especially when they're from, was it Vietnam or something? It was
that's
obviously shady. It was so obviously shady, it wasn't funny.
Yeah, that would be you know what? If anybody ever, if this is, I'm going to just put this out there. If you could do us a TextNAP solid and find the time link and in a YouTube video and link that in the subreddit of when we covered that story, I would really like that because that's a go-to story for us, and we should put that if we ever do a best of, we should put that in there because we have these cornerstone stories, and that Experian guy selling Experian data was one of them. I would love help on that because I have no idea where that would be in the TextNAP catalog, but I'd love to find it. And you can link using YouTube to the time code specifically, and then just submit it over at techsnap.reddit.com. Alan, that brings us to the end of today's episode of the TechSNAP program. TechSNAP.reddit.com is where a lot of these stories came from. You could submit a story that you'd like to see us have covered there or engage in a discussion with our community. And join us live, won't you? We do this show live Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC.
Or you can go to jblive.info for the audio-only version of this show, which is great for commuting or sitting at your desk where they don't want a video stream or whatever. I don't know. jblive.info's got the AM and FM versions. Also, RSS feeds of this show available, so you just get the download version as soon as it's available. Show notes for everything we talked about also over on the website and all that good stuff. But that brings us to the end right here. So I want to say thank you very much for joining us on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Don't forget to tune in on the next week's show, and we'll see you right back here, right then.